When the world sleeps, some are still moving, quietly, relentlessly while no one is watching. Excuses are easy, but what if you let them go? What if every I can't became I must, and every closed door became a call to break through? This isn't about hype or noise. It's about the silent, sleepless hours where real change is born. Imagine the version of you that chooses effort over comfort, purpose over pride, and grit over all the reasons to stop. The grind demands everything, but it returns something greater, your own transformation. The morning is quiet, no alarms, no fanfare, just the soft hum of a city that hasn't yet decided whether to wake up or turn over and hide from the day. There are moments like this everywhere, in every town, in every home, the thin stretch of time before decisions are made. It's here that the story begins, not with a headline or a victory, but in the gentle uncertainty before the grind. For most, it starts with a choice so small, it's almost invisible. Maybe it's the moment you swing your legs out of bed when everything aches and nothing feels urgent. Maybe it's sitting at a battered kitchen table, staring at the same list of bills or unfinished plans. Maybe it's hearing your name called at work, your effort unseen, your value quietly questioned. The grind is not glamorous. It's not an anthem played in crowded stadiums. It is the today decision to try, when no one cheers, when no one cares, when it seems like the world rewards noise and speed, but you're moving quietly and slowly against the current. But this is where real transformation lies. In the silent tug between I could rest and I will rise. The central theme is simple: excuses will always be there. Easy, logical, often justified. But what lies beyond excuses is not just achievement, but a fundamental shift in who you are. Let's ground this story in the faces and voices that rarely fill the spotlight. The young woman who returns from her night shift, hands stained, eyes heavy, still carving time for her dreams before the city even stirs. The father who lost his job and quietly teaches himself new skills by lamplight, refusing to let his setbacks define his children's future. The student who fails the test, feels the sting of disappointment, but returns to the library instead of retreating. These are not distant heroes. They are your neighbors, your friends, your reflection in the bathroom mirror at 5 a.m. Perseverance isn't loud, and purpose isn't always a lightning bolt. It is the quiet, steady pulse that says, not today. I won't let this be the end. There is no privilege in the grind. It doesn't wait for the perfect circumstances. It demands that you show up as you are, with your doubts, your scars, your history. You don't need special talent or perfect timing. You need the willingness to begin where you are and to move, even when progress feels invisible. Imagine the inner monologue that shapes these mornings. No one will know if I give up today. I've failed before. Maybe this is just how it goes. Someone else had a better start. Maybe I'm just not meant for more. And then, quietly, the turning point. But what if? What if I'm the exception? What if the story isn't over? This is where the grind is different from the performance. It isn't for applause, for a scoreboard, or even for validation. It's a kind of invisible agreement with yourself that showing up, especially when it's hardest, is a declaration of self-respect. There's a culture built on shortcuts, on selling the dream of overnight success, on the myth that talent alone is what separates the winners. But look closer at the stories that last. They're built on repetition, on stubbornness, on the refusal to let excuses win. They're built on days that felt empty but became foundation stones, on nights that yielded nothing but quiet resilience, on early mornings where the only witness to your effort was the silence itself. Let's talk about quiet strength. This isn't about never feeling tired, never having doubts, or never wishing for something easier. It's about doing it anyway. It's about returning again and again to the work. The grind is humbling. It will not flatter your ego, but it is loyal and it will change you in ways that ease never could. Take the story of Eric Thomas, whose words anchor this theme. He grew up facing hardships most will never know: homelessness, academic struggles, being overlooked and underestimated. His journey was paved with moments where excuses would have made sense to anyone. I'm too tired. I don't have what they have. This isn't fair. But he decided to grind without excuses, to outwork every doubt and every setback. The discipline he forged in silence became his loudest testimony. He didn't find success in comfort. He found himself through the grind. But this is not just about extraordinary people. The grind is democratic. It asks for your best, not your perfection. You do not need to come from greatness. You build it one unglamorous day at a time. In every culture, there's a reverence for those who endure, not because they never fall, but because they always rise. Perseverance is a quiet kind of power. It doesn't need an audience. The farmer in the fields before sunrise, the artist sketching by candlelight, the parent returning home after 2 jobs, still present for a child's small victories and failures. These are the true faces of the grind. There is something universal in the struggle to move forward when progress is invisible and the world seems indifferent. If you've ever felt the weight of trying when you are tired, or wondered if anyone notices the effort behind your smallest victories, you are not alone. The grind is where people find themselves, where you learn that progress is built from 1,000 invisible choices, not a single dramatic moment. Purpose, too, is not handed down from above. It is uncovered through effort, through repetition, through the slow unearthing of what matters most to you. And often, you don't even realize you're building it until you look back and see how far you've come. The grind becomes a mirror. You see yourself stripped of pretense and excuse, and you decide every day who you want to be. The world tells you to wait for inspiration, to hope for luck, to wish for better breaks. But what if you acted instead? What if today you refused to make an excuse? What if you gave yourself permission to grind, to fail, to try again, not for approval, but for your own quiet pride? As the city wakes up, as the world starts its day, you've already won a battle no one saw. That victory, the choice to show up, to try, to grind without excuses is yours. And it's the foundation for everything that follows. This story is yours. It's not about being the fastest or the loudest. It's about being the one who didn't quit, who refused to hide behind reasons, who believed in the slow miracle of steady effort. The grind isn't pretty, but it is honest. It won't always give you the ending you want, but it will give you the strength to write your own next chapter. And when you look back, you'll see it clearly. Every excuse you refused, every quiet morning you claimed, every invisible victory you earned. These were the moments that transformed you. That's the truth of the grind, and it's how your story begins. The grind is not a straight road. It is a series of uphill battles fought in silence and in shadow. After the first burst of determination, reality sets in, progress slows, setbacks mount, and the world's distractions crowd out the voice that once whispered, "Keep going." It is here, in these spaces between effort and outcome, that the true conflict unfolds, not against the world, but within the self. Imagine a young man named Marcus. He works 2 jobs, one by day, one by night, yet every month, he still finds himself falling short. Bills pile up. The refrigerator is half empty. Friends call him to join them for laughter and relief, but he declines more often than not. His eyes carry the weight of dreams deferred and exhaustion unspoken. The world outside sees only his absence, his quietness, the way he keeps to himself. No one applauds the hours he puts in or the moments he spends fighting the urge to surrender. In the quiet of his small apartment, Marcus sits alone, the room lit only by the flickering blue of his laptop screen. He scrolls past images of others succeeding, vacations, promotions, new beginnings. It stirs something raw inside him. Envy, frustration, even shame. Why not me? He wonders. Am I missing something? Am I simply not enough? It is a battle familiar to so many. The world celebrates the finish line, but rarely the daily footfall that gets you there. You try, you fail, you try again. But sometimes it feels as if you're running in place while everyone else is moving forward. This is where excuses become seductive. They offer relief. Maybe I just wasn't cut out for this. Maybe I'm too old, too late, too tired. Each excuse is a gentle permission to rest, to justify not trying, to let go of a dream before they can let go of you. Excuses feel safe, almost rational. They are the world's way of explaining away the pain of striving and the risk of failing. But beneath that comfort lies a deeper conflict, the knowledge that every excuse accepted is a brick in the wall that separates you from your potential. The struggle is not just to move forward, but to resist the urge to retreat, to wake up day after day and choose to try again. Now the world adds its weight. The culture of shortcuts and instant rewards blares from every device, 10 steps to overnight success. How I made it big in a month. Every headline is a reminder that you're slow. Grinding progress doesn't fit the story society wants to hear. The stories of endurance, of working late while others rest, of failing, learning, and returning for more. These stories are quieter, less glamorous, but infinitely more real. And yet, the external world brings more than just temptation. It brings real resistance. There are systems designed to tell you where you do not belong. Maybe you are the only woman in the boardroom, the only one without a degree, the only one speaking with an accent that others dismiss. Maybe you carry the weight of your family's hopes, or your community's doubts, or your own bruised history of failure. Marcus, in his struggle, faces not just his own doubt, but the skepticism of those around him. Why work so hard for so little? His uncle asks, shaking his head. You'll burn out. His supervisor warns, unconvinced he'll last the year. Society resists quiet ambition. It rewards spectacle over substance. It tells you to keep your dreams within the lines, to aim only for what others can understand. The temptation to give up is sharpened by the indifference or even resistance of the crowd. But conflict is not just a battle against discouragement. It is a crucible where discipline is forged. It is easy to do the work when you are inspired, when applause is expected. It is much harder when the only witness is your own reflection and the only applause is the silence after you finish another thankless task. The grind demands discipline, not as punishment, but as a promise you keep to yourself. Marcus writes his goals on a sticky note above his bed. He reads them every morning. Most days, he doesn't feel inspired. Most days, he feels the drag of fatigue and the dull ache of being unseen. Yet, he makes a plan. He puts in the work. He fails often, spectacularly. But he refuses to let failure harden him into cynicism or let bitterness rot his hope. Failure, too, is part of the grind's conflict. Not the final dramatic collapse, but the small daily defeats. The missed promotion, the exam failed by 2 points, the relationship that couldn't survive the distance, the rejection letter that arrives after months of hoping. Each failure tempts you to believe in limitation. Maybe this is my ceiling. Maybe this is where I stop. But every time you return, every time you try again, you carve a deeper groove of resilience. You learn to sit with disappointment without letting it define you. You discover that discipline is not about suppressing emotion, but about moving forward in spite of it. The inner voice of doubt never really goes away. You're not enough. You're wasting your time. Others have it easier. But with every act of discipline, the voice loses a bit of its power. You begin to recognize it for what it is, not prophecy, but fear. Not destiny, but a test. There are nights when Marcus cannot sleep. He lies awake thinking about the job he lost, the rent that's due, the future that feels impossibly far. He considers briefly letting go. He remembers the words of his grandfather, a man who worked with his hands until they bled. No one promised you fair, only that you could try. And in the darkness, Marcus makes a decision. He will try again without excuse, not because the odds have changed, but because he has. In the furnace of resistance, he's discovered something he didn't expect belief. Not the nah of a hope at the beginning, but the quiet self-respect that comes from doing what is hard, even when it doesn't seem to matter. But conflict is not lived in isolation. It echoes in every family struggling to build a future from nothing, in every immigrant learning a new language under fluorescent lights, in every mother who sacrifices her own dreams so her children can chase theirs. It is there in every person who shows up tired, worried, sometimes alone, but chooses to grind anyway. The grind without excuses isn't about denying hardship. It's about facing it, eyes open, and refusing to be reduced by it. It's about acknowledging your failures, owning your flaws, and yet returning, always returning to the work. Some days, progress is invisible. Some days you fall short. But every day you choose discipline over excuse. Every day you keep your promise to yourself. You change the ending of your story. Grit isn't given, it is earned one choice at a time. Society may never see the work. The world may not care about the nights you spent awake or the mornings you conquered alone. But the grind is not for them. It is for you. It is how you learn that your value does not depend on applause, that your dignity is not for sale. It is in the work, the discipline, the repeated effort, the silent victories, that you find the substance of self-belief. The injustice is real. The setbacks are real. The struggle is not always fair. But excuses will never build the life you want. Only the grind will. And so the conflict deepens. The world tells you to stop, to rest, to make peace with what you have. The voice inside you wonders if it is foolish to try again. But you do. You rise without promise, without fanfare, without excuse. And in that act, day after day, you discover the unbreakable part of yourself. That is the heart of the conflict, not a battle to win, but a path to walk. One step, one choice, one day at a time. The grind continues, not because you are unafraid, but because you have learned to move forward in spite of fear. In the quiet, in the struggle, in the darkness before dawn, you become the kind of person who doesn't need excuses because you found something deeper, the relentless, quiet power to begin again. The world outside Marcus's window is quiet. It is the kind of night that presses in on all sides, as if even the air has grown weary. He sits alone at his desk, the glow of his laptop the only light in a room filled with bills, rejection letters, and half-written plans. For a long time, he stares at the cursor blinking on the screen, taunting, expectant, and unyielding. He feels every weight, every moment he nearly quit. He wonders if all his effort has meant anything at all. But something is different tonight. The exhaustion is not gone, but it has changed shape. Instead of pressing down, it feels almost like a silence before a storm, dense, electric waiting. For the first time in months, Marcus lets himself truly feel the disappointment, the frustration, the ache of never feeling enough. He lets it wash over him, not as an enemy, but as proof he cared enough to hurt. As he sits in the stillness, a memory surfaces. His grandfather's voice, rough and unwavering. No one promised you fair, only that you could try. He hears it not as criticism, but as a gift. The grind, he realizes, was never about the outcome. It was about showing up, refusing to surrender to circumstances or excuses, and claiming every day as his own, regardless of applause or reward. Something shifts deep within Marcus. He sees his journey not as a string of failures, but as a testament to resilience. Every early morning, he forced himself out of bed. Every late night, he spent learning. Every time he got back up after falling. These moments were not wasted. They were the grind's true reward. They made him strong in places no one could see. He remembers the first time he tried to quit. How easy it was to imagine a softer life, one without risk or effort. But what would he have been left with? Regret, maybe. The haunting suspicion that he could have been more. It's this thought that finally brings clarity. Excuses are not shields. They are chains, each one he had ever used. It's too late. I'm too tired. Someone else has it easier. Was a link in the chain that held him back from himself. And so, in the quiet, Marcus makes a new promise. Not to never fail, not to always win, but to always try. To make his effort the measure of his worth, not the outcome. He realizes the grind was never about proving something to the world, but about discovering the unbreakable part of himself. He sees now that every excuse rejected was a piece of armor forged in fire. Marcus stands and looks around his small apartment, not as a place of struggle, but as an arena where he has trained his spirit. The bills, the rejection letters, the plans, they are no longer evidence of defeat, but proof of battle. He can feel the difference in his posture, in the way he breathes. He is no longer running from pain or failure. He is running toward himself. That night, Marcus writes a letter not to a company or a friend, but to himself. I owe myself everything. I have walked through storms I never thought I'd survive. I have failed, but I have learned. I have stumbled, but I have moved forward. I am not perfect, but I am relentless. I am not here to be rescued by circumstance, but to rise by choice. The grind is not a punishment. It is a privilege. It is where I become. The realization is simple but profound. Excuses keep you safe, but they also keep you small. The grind without excuses is the purest act of faith, not in some external force, but in the possibility that you are worth the effort, that you are worthy of your own best. And that worth is something no setback, no failure, no lack of recognition can ever take away. The next morning, the world is still indifferent, still demanding. Marcus faces the same long hours, the same uncertain future, but he walks into his day differently. The weight he carries has become a source of strength. He is not immune to frustration or fatigue, but he no longer fears them. They are simply part of the process, companions on the journey. He finds a quiet power in his routine. The small acts, the early alarm, the second cup of coffee, the extra hour of study become sacred. They are not chores, but choices. Everyone is a declaration, I am here. I am trying. I am not finished. And in this new mindset, Marcus begins to notice something unexpected. His work becomes more focused. He feels less resentment, more purpose. He starts to help others, offering advice to a coworker, encouraging a friend who wants to give up. He is not motivated by perfection, but by progress. Each day, the grind becomes less of a burden and more of a gift. The discipline he once forced now flows from a deeper well. He realizes, too, that the world's validation was never necessary. He does not need applause to know he is worthy. The transformation is not about achieving a single goal, but about becoming a person who can face whatever comes next without excuses, without fear, and without regret. In that moment, Marcus understands the true power of the grind. It is not what you gain, but what you become. It is the quiet strength that can only be built in silence, the dignity that survives every setback, the resilience that grows not from easy victories, but from hard-fought days when quitting seems so much easier. This is the turning point, not a moment of external triumph, but an inner revolution. The day Marcus chooses, fully and finally, to grind without excuses is the day he discovers the power that has always lived within him, the power to begin again every single day, no matter what the world says, no matter how many times he falls. That is the gift of the grind, and it is waiting for anyone willing to choose it. The grind does not end with fireworks or confetti. There are no headlines, no crowds at the finish line. Instead, it ends, if it ends at all, with a quiet peace. The kind that grows inside a person who has faced the storm and stayed standing. For Marcus and for anyone walking this path, the true victory lies in a different place, a deep, unshakable sense of self-respect. Marcus's story does not become a viral sensation. He is not suddenly lifted from struggle into ease. The bills still arrive, the hours are still long, and the setbacks do not disappear. But something essential has changed. He greets the new day not with dread, but with a clear-eyed acceptance of the work ahead. He understands now that dignity is not about never falling. It is about the decision to rise again and again, without bitterness or complaint. This clarity is hard-won. It comes from years of small choices, each one a statement of worth. It is forged from mornings spent working while the world sleeps, from nights sitting with disappointment but refusing to be defined by it. The grind is no longer an enemy, but a companion. Marcus learns to trust the process, to value the journey over the result. He begins to notice the subtle ways the grind changes him. He stands straighter. He speaks with more patience. The bitterness that once crept in is replaced by a grounded humility. When he sees others struggling, he no longer judges. Instead, he offers understanding and respect. He has learned through his own hardship that every person carries unseen burdens and silent battles. This is the ultimate lesson. Worth is not something given by others. It cannot be won through applause or external validation. It is something that is built one hard day at a time in the privacy of your own effort. Marcus is no longer looking for permission to try. He knows now that the act of grinding, of refusing to hide behind excuses, of choosing discipline over comfort, creates an inner worth no one can take away. In his small moments of solitude, Marcus finds peace. He sits at his kitchen table, drinking coffee before dawn, and allows himself to reflect on his journey. There is a kind of redemption in realizing that every failure, every moment of doubt was not a detour, but a vital part of the path. The world may never see these moments, but they have shaped him in ways that matter most. Marcus carries this quiet strength into every part of his life. He becomes the friend who listens deeply, the colleague who encourages others, the mentor who reminds the next person struggling that their story is not finished. He learns to take pride not in being the best, but in being consistent, in being authentic, in being present. His grind is no longer something to escape. It is the place he discovered his own dignity. This perspective aligns with the deepest cultural values: respect, authenticity, perseverance. In every culture, there are stories of those who endured, not because they were chosen or lucky, but because they refused to give up on themselves. Marcus's journey is not unique in its struggle, but it is unique in its conclusion. He does not become jaded or bitter or small. Instead, he finds a gentle confidence, a belief that his value is real, no matter what the scoreboard says. The redemption is not flashy. It is quiet, steady, and real. It is the moment you stop asking the world for permission to matter. It is the moment you realize that the person who grinds without excuses, who shows up again and again, is someone you can respect, someone you can be proud to become. When the world seems obsessed with noise and speed, Marcus's story stands as a reminder. True worth is found in quiet persistence. Dignity is built in silence. Authenticity is earned, not declared. The grind, with all its difficulty and pain, is also the place where transformation happens. Not in a single cinematic breakthrough, but in the slow accumulation of honest effort. Marcus now understands that the greatest peace comes not from escaping difficulty, but from knowing you can endure it. The grind does not protect you from failure, but it gives you something more important: the ability to meet each day with a clear mind, an open heart, and an unbreakable commitment to yourself. That is where self-respect is born. And that is where it lives long after the world has turned its attention elsewhere. The message for anyone watching, for anyone struggling in their own silent battles, is this: you do not need permission to try. You do not need the world's approval to matter. Your worth is built in the shadows, in the early mornings and late nights, in every moment you choose effort over excuse. If you grind quietly, honestly, relentlessly, you will find something more lasting than praise. You will find peace. And so as the sun rises on another day, Marcus is ready. Not because life is suddenly easier, but because he is stronger, wiser, and more true to himself. He knows now that the real victory is not out there in the world's applause, but right here in the dignity he claims every time he grinds without excuses. That is the promise of the grind, and it is a promise anyone can claim starting today. If you've ever doubted whether your quiet effort matters, let this be your reminder. Real change is built in silence, far from the applause. The grind may feel lonely, but every honest step you take without excuse shapes the person you become. Your struggle is not invisible. It's the foundation of your dignity, your strength, and your self-worth. Today, honor your own journey, whether you're starting out or still climbing. Remember, you don't need permission to show up, to try again, or to build a life grounded in respect and authenticity. Your effort matters, even if only you see it. If this message spoke to you, leave a single word in the comments below that captures what you're taking from today's video. Maybe it's discipline, grit, respect, or resilience. Let's fill this space with the words that drive us all forward, together and without excuses.